Sounds perfect. Thank you.
Good afternoon. My name is Tina Nybo Jensen, and I'm Senior Coordinator, Governance Relations here at GRI. Welcome to this meeting of the Global Sustainability Standards Board, known by its acronym, the GSSB, held on 23rd of February 2017. This virtual meeting is being hosted from the GRI Secretariat Office in Amsterdam, the Netherlands. Please note that all public GSSB meetings are being recorded, and you can find the audio recording on the GSSB webpage, along with high-level summaries of previous GSSB meetings. Present from the GI Secretariat today are Bastian Bock, the Director Standards Division, and Pamela Carpio, the Senior Coordinator Governance Relations. And we'll just start with the roll call of the GSSB members. We have Mr. Attila Jarlikaya.
Yes.
Thank you. And we have Mr. Daniel Tayang.
Yes, I'm present.
Thank you. And Mr. Dwight Justice.
I'm here. Can you hear me?
Yes, we hear you very clear, Dwight. Thank you. We have Mr. Evan Harvey.
Hello, I'm on the line.
Thank you. And Ms. Julia Wilson.
Present. Thank you.
Thank you. And Mr. Jürgen Buxbaum.
Yes, I'm here. Hello.
Hello. And Mr. Kent Swift.
Yes, I'm here.
Thank you. And Ms. Kirsten Margrethe Hovey.
Present.
Thank you. And Mr. Michel Washer.
Yes, I'm present.
Thank you. And Mr. Nankumar Vadakapat.
I'm present. Thank you.
Thank you. And Ms. Robin Leeson. And that was Ms. Robin Leeson. I will just check with her. And then we have Mr. Stian van Draag, and I know he's on the line as well. And Ms. Sulema Pioli.
Hello, I'm here.
Thank you, Sulema. And then we have Ms. Judy Kuszewski, the GSSB chair.
Yes, hello. Thank you.
Thank you, Judy. So thank you, everyone. And then we would just like to note that GSSB member Mr. Daniel Ingram sent his apologies to this meeting. And then I'll just hand to the chair, Judy Kuszewski, to open the meeting.
Thank you, Tina. It's my very great pleasure and honor to open the meeting for the first time as chair, which is a job that I am humbled to have been asked to do, and I hope that I will do you justice. I know that all of you will make it easy for me, and I look forward to meeting and working with the new members, but also very much to continuing my collaboration with all the rest of you, whom I have known for quite some time now. So thank you all very much for your confidence in me, and please at any time do feel free to give me feedback on anything that you think that I could be doing to help things as your chair. To start the meeting, we have an agenda which you should all have received at this point. And incidentally, for those of you who might be new to our process, if you're using the webinar software, the Skype for Business interface, there is a little speech bubble in the lower left corner. And if you click that, that opens a chat window. If you would like to raise your hand, as it were, the easiest thing may be for you to send a little note on the chat window to indicate that you'd like to speak. If you're not using the webinar interface, just please indicate by saying something down the line, and we'll acknowledge you. The first item on our agenda is to approve our previous meeting summary. We'll then welcome and introduce the new GSSB members. Excuse me. We'll have a short presentation of the GSSB annual report, of which you have received a copy. This is the report of our progress over the foregoing year. We'll then discuss the progress on our standard reviews for water, occupational health and safety, and human rights, which will be taking place during 2017 or beginning during 2017. And then we have a number of items under any other business. I hope the agenda is acceptable to everyone. And if you have anything to say about the agenda at this moment, I would welcome those comments. Hearing nothing, I will assume you're all happy with the agenda, and that means that our first item of business is to approve the meeting summary from our December meeting. So if we can turn to that document, this is item 1. Are there any comments, questions, additions, corrections, edits to be made that we have received previous to the meeting, Tina?
No, we haven't received any comments before the meeting.
Okay. May I ask the committee members if anyone has anything to add to or adjust about this meeting record? Okay. Can I
Here,
assume?
none.
Ooh, yes, Nan Kumar, please.
I have no comment. Thank you.
Oh, good. Okay.
Judy, it's Theon. I wasn't present at that meeting, but I'm comfortable with the content.
Thank you, Stian.
Judy Sulema. I'm comfortable with. Hi, Judy. First of all, congratulations. We are very happy with your new assignment.
You're very kind. Thank you.
And second of all, I'm comfortable with the content, but I would like to stress that it would be important to receive in advance the material.
Yes, I think that's agreed.
Thank you.
Thank you, Sulema. Are there any other comments or questions or remarks that anyone would like to make? Hearing none, I would like to assume that means that the board is satisfied with this record of discussion, and we will enter it into the formal record of the GSSB. Yes, hearing no objection to that, I will say that we have so agreed, and then move us on to the next item on our agenda, which is to introduce a handful of new members to the GSSB. You've received as document item 2, which includes biographies of the new GSSB members. That includes myself, obviously, even though I'm not a new member, but I have agreed to take on a new role with respect to the board. We are very, very pleased to welcome some excellent new members to the board, and we're looking forward very much to working with them, if I may say so, on behalf of the board. I wonder if we could take a moment for each of the new members to just say a very few words of introduction. I know that we will have an opportunity to get to know one another much better at our upcoming in-person meeting in March. So there's no need, I think, to have a long discussion of our life stories. We'll get to that in March for sure. But please may I welcome, first of all, Evan Harvey to just say hello and a very brief introduction. Evan, if you don't mind.
No, thank you very much. It's a pleasure. Happy to make everyone's acquaintance. Look forward to seeing you in person next month. I am the Director of Corporate Responsibility at the NASDAQ stock market. NASDAQ is not just a North American concern. We have exchanges in other parts of the world as well, primarily the Nordics and Europe. I've been working at the exchange for about 14 years. I took this role on when they created it 5 years ago, and that was around the time that stock exchanges were getting heavily involved in sustainability and corporate reporting around ESG. I think it's fair to say that we've been pushing pretty hard within the industry for better corporate reporting standards, making more connections between investors and company management when it comes to the kinds of disclosures that we find really move the needle economically. And then I also come to you wearing a couple of different hats. I sit on the U.S. board for the UN Global Compact, so I've been working with the Global Compact in the U.S. For a number of years, and big believer in what the GSSB can be and can become. I think that corporate reporting is the first of a long multi-step process to get to a more sustainable future. I think there's a lot of opportunity here, and I'm a big fan of the GRI, so I'm happy to participate.
Thank you so much, Evan. We're really looking forward to working together. It's a great pleasure to welcome you. May I now call on Robin Leeson. Robin is known to some of the GSSB members previously through her earlier connection to the Technical Advisory Committee. But I would also like to note that the Independent Appointments Committee for GRI is very pleased to announce that Robin has agreed to take on the role of Vice Chair for the GSSB, which is an additional piece of news that we are very happy to share with all of you and with our stakeholders externally. I'm very grateful to Robin for taking on that responsibility. Robin, may I invite you to say a few words of introduction?
Hi, Judy. This is Tina from the Secretariat. Robin has just dropped off the line momentarily, so we're just trying to reconnect her.
Okay.
So I don't know
we'll
if
come back to her in a moment then.
Yeah, I'll let you know as soon as she's back. Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Actually,
So
I think I'm back. Can you hear me?
hello, Robin.
Hi.
Are you
So
on the line now?
Yes, I am. Sorry,
Great.
I could hear. I could hear some of what was going on. I apologise for that. Thank you very much, Judy, for the really kind introduction, and I really appreciate the opportunity to support you in the in that role as vice chair. So I'm sure when we meet face to face, we'll be able to work through some of those things. But really excited and grateful of the opportunity to act in that role. And yeah, I won't go through all of my bio notes, but mainly I work as an independent sustainability consultant in Australia now, but I did serve on GRI's Stakeholder Council and then acted as the Stakeholder Council's representative to the Technical Advisory Committee when G4 was being developed. So very strong supporter of GRI's mission, and really keen to have observed all of the changes over these years, and looking forward to seeing some more changes as we go ahead with the work program. So thanks again for the opportunity, and I hope I can make a contribution to the work.
Thank you, Robin. And I think, as is usual, I'd like to express my appreciation to the members who happen to be on the other side of the world from me, to be perfectly honest. I know that it's always a big commitment to get up in the middle of the night sometimes for these conference calls and to put in some unusual hours. It is a very big commitment, and we're grateful to Robin for that as well.
Judy, may I just add my congratulations to Robin for the deputy role, and just to make sure that she takes up the deputy role in terms of the wine tasting evenings as well.
It is very important.
I was wondering about the wine tasting event, but I support it.
I will take a note of that.
Thank you very much, Dion. Right, well, may I invite Kent Swift to say hello to the board now, please.
Hello, everyone. This is Kent Swift. I am a professor at the University of Montana in the USA. I teach in the accounting department, but for the last 5 years or so, I've turned my focus to sustainability reporting. I teach a course in it. I've taught the course also in Europe, and I've also helped to train other faculty who are interested in developing this type of course. I'm passionate about the GRI, and I look forward to actively participating in this committee.
Thank you very much, Kent, and welcome. Michel Wacher, may I invite you to say hello to the board?
Yes, hello everybody. So I'm Michel Wacher. I'm Solvay's Deputy Chief Sustainability Officer. Solvay is a chemical company that has a history of more than 150 years, and with the majority of the shares still belonging to the descendants of the founding families, which in a way says something about the sustainability of the company. My interest for sustainability starts in 1988, very early, so when I was in Solvay's Health, Safety and Environment department, and never left since. What I find fascinating is that sustainability is a very dynamic discipline. What sustainability was in the 80s with a simple people, planet, profit model, and what it is becoming now with much more complicated models like the integrated reporting framework. It's changing fast. I think it's going to be very different 5 years from now, especially with digitalization coming in. And I'm very excited to be part of that evolution.
Thank you very much, Michel. It's a great pleasure to welcome you. Julia Wilson, are you on the line? May I invite you to introduce yourself briefly?
Yes, thank you. Excited to be here, excited to be part of the group. I am Julia Wilson, Director of Global Responsibility and Sustainability at Nielsen. So I'm responsible for all of our environmental, social governance, or ESG strategy and the external reporting that we do with our stakeholders, and responsible for publishing our first non-financial materiality assessment a couple of years ago, as well as our first GRI report last May. So we are newer to GRI as corporate entities go, but excited to be part of this great group and part of working on the standards. So glad to join the group.
Great, welcome. And finally, Attila Yerlikaya. I hope I'm pronouncing your name correctly, but please correct me if I'm not. Welcome.
Thank you. Pretty okay, Attila. It's fine. I am Attila Yerlikaya, the Group Corporate Affairs Director for Coca-Cola İçecek, CCI. CCI is a publicly traded company at the Istanbul Stock Exchange. The company is the second largest bottler in the Coca-Cola sphere in terms of population we serve, by some 400 million people, and operating in a very broad geography encompassing from Central Asia to Middle East to Pakistan to Turkey. My company is seen as a pioneer in social reporting in our operating geography. I am a true believer of the GRI's mission and destination statement in terms of helping businesses, governments, and organizations to better understand the impact of their critical sustainability issues. So I'm really glad to be here. I'm really honored to be here. An economist by formation and a journalist almost 2 decades ago, and serving for a global multinational organization in emerging markets for the last 17 years. That's more about that. Again, extremely happy to be here.
That's fantastic. Thank you to all of the new members. It is really a great pleasure to be welcoming you to the Standards Board. May I invite any other members of the Standards Board to let us know if you'd like to say anything or ask any questions of any of the new members. Again, we will have an opportunity when we meet in person in March to really get to know each other very well. So if anyone has a question now or would like to say something now, please do raise your hand, as it were. And may I also, just on behalf of the board, say that it is really gratifying to see, through the hard work of the Independent Appointments Committee for GRI, that they have managed to find for us members of such good standing and such good quality and powerful backgrounds to help us keep the Standards Board relevant and fresh and keep our work moving forward in a really positive way. So I think I speak for everybody on the Standards Board when I say welcome to all of you, and we very much look forward to working together. If there are no further comments to be made at this moment, I'd like to then move on, we're a bit ahead of schedule here, to the next item on our agenda. We have item number 3, which is the GSSB annual report. May I invite Bastian Buck, the head of the Standards Division, to talk us through this document and let us know what's in it, and we do want to make a decision to approve this draft report for publication. Bastian?
Thank you, Judy, and welcome also from me to all the members of the GSSB. The draft GSB annual report that you have in front of you is the result of a due process requirement. It's point 37 of the GSSB terms of reference that the GSB shall publish on the GSSB website an annual report of its activities. We have discussed this matter with the GSSB in early 2016 and agreed back then that for the first GSB annual report issued under the new governance structure and by the GSSB, we would cover the time from November 2015 till the end of 2016, so December 2016. And what we are aiming to do with the report and that you're looking at is to provide a high-level overview of all the activities and therefore also meetings that you had and provide an account of the progress you have made over the year. Over the 14 months that are covered by the report. We have deliberately chosen not to go into a great level of detail about the individual activities, but we have summarized based on the agendas of the meetings and the outcomes of the meeting, the main achievements of the GSB during the different quarters. And we've also used the opportunity to tie this report back into the wells of information that is actually publicly available, all the records of the meetings, including the agendas of the calls and in-person meetings, and then subsequently also all the documents. So what we're trying to establish with this document is a high-level overview of activities and allow those that have appetite for looking at the detail of it to venture into more detail on the website. We keep, also in line with due process, a record of all public materials and meeting documents, as well as the recordings of the meetings there. And we hope that we are actually that way responsive to two sets, basically, of stakeholders. Some that have an interest just following high level what the GSSB is doing to get an overall feel for the activities of the GSB, and then those that have an interest in specific issues that they can take a deep dive and look at the contents. We don't have specific questions for you other than asking whether you have any comments on the document that you're looking at or any suggested changes at this point in time. Our proposal is to approve this document today, and we would then move this forward and publish it on the GSSB website in line with due process. So it's now your opportunity to raise questions or make suggestions on how to improve this document further. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Bastian. So I will just open the floor then to the Standards Board members to let us know if you have any questions, comments, parts of the document that you would like to discuss. I can say that Kirsten Hofi and Stian van Draak have both raised their hands. I'll call first on Kirsten. Please go ahead, Kirsten.
Thank you, Judy. I think that the report has the correct level of detail. It should definitely not be more detailed, at least. The only thing I'm really missing here is the constitution of the composition of the GSSB during this period. I think that's an important part of such a report. Thank you.
Thank you. And Stian?
Judy, I agree with the adding of the members of the GSSB. Further agree that it's a true reflection of the work that was done during the period and that we can release it in the public domain.
Thank you, Stian. Any other comments or issues to raise? Bastian, may I ask you to explain how this is then used as part of the due process and what role there is for this report going forward? And can you just clarify that we are required to do this on an annual basis, and so we'll do this again roughly this time next year, yes?
Correct. So the due process requirement is an annual report of its activities for the GSB. And the function that it serves is mostly, I think, an accountability exercise to the wider public that might have an interest in the proceedings of the GSSB. It is not formally part of the mechanism that we have in terms of oversight with the DPOC. We will probably also make this available to the DPOC so that they have a good overview of how we're summarizing the activities of the last year, but more importantly, how we then have fulfilled the due process requirement specifically for the activity report. But there are no other additional elements, I think, to consider for the GSB. We will move that to an annual activity now, and the next time around that we have this for approval will be January, February next year.
Okay, thank you. Would anyone else like to ask a question or raise a remark at this point? Or for that matter, move to approve this document for publication? We don't necessarily have to take a vote if there are no dissensions from it. So if there aren't any comments or questions, I can suggest that we agree on a consensus basis that we are happy to have this finalized and published for the public. And I'll say thank you to Stian, who's expressed his support to approve the document. Barring any kind of objections, I think we will accept that.
Judy, I'm raising my hand again. Yeah.
Oh, you are? Sorry, I missed you.
Kirsten here. I didn't really get a response to my comment about that the composition of the GSSB should be included. For me, it's not part of such a report, and that's also about good governance and general reporting requirements, as also stated in the GRI standards.
Indeed, and that was also backed up by Stian's comment. So, Bastian, can I confirm that the Standards Division has taken note of that request that the composition of the board be properly accounted for in the document? And if we are agreed to that with that particular change, then it is my sense that we are probably agreed to publish the document with that change.
Yes, this is Bastian. So I can just confirm that we will implement that change and will include the membership of the GSB for the term November 2015 to December 2016 in the document.
Thank you. And I will assume, unless you tell me otherwise, that the board is happy for that to simply go ahead, that we don't need to see the updated draft of the document before it goes out, given the sort of straightforward nature of that update to it. And Kirsten has another comment. Please, yeah, Kirsten, go ahead.
It isn't directly to this report, but it is related, and that is to the GRI report itself, the GRI report, where I was a bit surprised that I found the GSSB's picture in it, but not any names of the members of the GSSB, which I think is a rather strange way of doing it. But that's more a comment to the Stiftung GRI. But I hope...
Shall we note that comment for the benefit of the GRI Secretariat and ask them to keep that in mind in the future when they create GRI report?
Yes, please.
Okay, yeah, okay. Bastian, are you happy with that?
Absolutely. We will convey that message to the responsible colleagues here. Yeah.
Thank you. Okay, well, with that, I think that we have consensus on this document, and we'll be happy to release that to the public. We are quite well ahead of schedule at this point, which is a very good thing. Hopefully, that will give us a little extra time to talk about any of the more complex aspects of our agenda if we need to. The next item on our agenda is an update on the process of reviewing the 3 standards for beginning immediately and a little bit further down the line in 2017, which are water, occupational health and safety, and human rights. And I would like to invite Chelsea Reinhardt from the Standards Division to talk us through that process, please. Chelsea?
Yeah, and this is Bastian again. Chelsea is not able to present to you today due to adverse weather conditions here. She had to leave to the airport early to make it home in time for the weekend. So I will be presenting and assuming that role. So let me take you through the contents. First of all, it is a reminder that we are working still within the timelines that we have presented to the GSSB and earlier meetings, and we've broken basically our overall portfolio of standards updates into 2 phases. One phase was the OHS and water work that is currently underway, and we'll come back to that in a minute. And the second phase was the human rights and economic performance related work, and this is already started, but this is not right now in a background research phase, and we are only moving towards launching a call for project working group or a technical committee members, and that we will have more discussions with you on that subject matter. But it is at this stage to confirm that we're still in line with the communicated timeline on phase 1 and phase 2. In terms of progress for the OHS and water work, we have just this week closed the call for nominations, and we have received a significant number, nearly 50 applications for each of the working groups. And I can report back that the caliber of the applicants is really promising. So we have some of the world's leading content experts in these particular subject matters applying to our processes. We are, and the team is extremely busy with that, interviewing all the candidates, and we will come forward with a proposed membership, and we will submit that by the 2nd of March to the GSSB. Excellent work has been done here by the project managers, Anna, Laura, Sarah in our team who has helped with the communication, but obviously also Chelsea, to spread the word about it and engage people on this opportunity. And also individual GSB members have helped us to really communicate this out to the world. And I think it's safe to say that we've never seen such a strong set of applicants for issue level updates, and I think it's another indication that there is really keen interest out there to engage with our processes. That is one, but also I think it's a testament to the modular structure that you have decided with the transition to standards, because it really enables us now to engage issue level experts and to move a bit away from the generalists that have good expertise in terms of applying standards and deal with that for corporations on a daily basis, but are probably not experts on the specific issue in all instances. And we're moving really now into a phase where you have issue level experts also from all the constituencies represented. And I think that is very, very promising. We are sharing, or we're planning currently to share the proposed membership by the 2nd of March. We are aware that this gives you a very, very short time window to review the proposed membership, but it will be 2 documents, and we're working towards about 15 members for each of the groups for you to review, so that there won't be a great level of material to review in total for you. We would like to ask you to reserve time in your agenda. And the reason that we are aiming to approve that in the upcoming virtual meeting on the 7th of March is this will allow us to give a heads up to the experts that they have been selected and to schedule in the meetings as per our timeline in the coming months. And that's something we've heard, I think also due to the seniority of the applicants and their busy schedules. They would like to have as early as possible an indication how we want to work with them, and we're trying to adhere to that by scheduling an additional meeting on the 7th of March with you to review and approve the membership, and doing that ahead of the in-person meeting later in March enables us to really confirm agendas as quickly as possible. When you we've discussed with some of you that there was for OHS a lack of participation, well, nominations from the Labour constituency, but Dwight has done excellent work on filling that void. Labour will come forward with a number of experts to be nominated for the group, so we will be able to close that process also in line with our timeline, and to provide a slate for your review on the 7th of March.
Bastian, can I ask that we just pause there for a moment,
sure,
just to ensure that the board is fully behind you on this timeline and what it is that they are being asked to do with respect to the composition of those working groups. It's also worth just saying that each one of those working groups will have at least one, probably more than one, sponsor from the GSSB that has a certain liaison responsibility, and perhaps it's just worth saying a little bit about what that is and how that will work, and whether there is any role for the GSSB liaison while we are reviewing and approving the working group membership process. Is that all right if we do that now, or do you have that planned at another part of the discussion?
Absolutely, we can do that now. So I was about to come to that point. We're presenting to the full GSSB next week a proposed membership for the working groups, which we will have vetted with the project sponsors. So those of the members of the GSB that have come forward and volunteered to be the conduit into these technical processes and be reporting back to the GSSB on the progress made there. We have several members that have come forward and confirmed their availability to support the process. Stian and Kirsten for OHS, and for For water, we have Nang Kumar so far. If other members have an interest in being involved as well, please let us know. We will vet the initial proposal with them next week before it goes to the GSSB. And I think in the 7th of March meeting, the project sponsors will also be able to provide an update then on their perspective on the project membership.
Thank you very much, Bastian. And Stian has raised his hand. Stian, would you like to make a comment?
Judy, yes. Firstly, just my thanks to the Secretariat for the excellent work that they did so far in preparation of the documentation, the introduction packs, etc. And then secondly, working with Kirsten and Laura on the OHS one, we've got a meeting scheduled for Tuesday. I've noted that a public working group in-person meeting is planned for May. We'll discuss it on Tuesday. I need to travel to Europe in any case in the second week of May, so it will be opportune if we can coordinate the dates.
Yes, thank you, Stian. And I think that's indeed for next week to discuss directly with the project team. We will try to accommodate as much as possible, obviously, the schedule also of the GSSB members. And I've seen also a comment by Sulema that she has put her name forward for water. So if others want to get involved, that is perfectly possible, and the project team will come back to you on that specifically. Please let us know if you have an interest. But be also, I think, mindful of the upcoming agenda of additional reviews. So there's ample opportunity going forward to be involved in projects, and this project will span actually over almost a year, well, actually a bit more than that. So it is also a significant commitment for you over and above your commitment as a GSSB member. In terms of next steps then, at the 7th of March virtual meeting, we want to discuss and improve the membership, and we will then start to schedule the meetings, calls with the project working group. We expect to have 4 to 5 virtual meetings between April and July, and 1 in-person meeting in Amsterdam for each of the groups. We will be working on a system to allow a peer review process, so we will have very many experts that cannot have a keen interest in being involved, but probably cannot commit to a project working group, also institutions. And we believe that one way of making good use of that expertise is to offer them a sneak peek of the contents that are under development, vet that with those additional experts outside the working group, so that the GSB has also a first indication of how what the working group is developing fares with the practitioners out there and issue-level experts. We are scheduled right now in our timeline for July to review together with the GSSB the exposure draft and approve it, so that we would start the public comment period then. We will be updating you on progress made and key issues covered in the proceedings of the working groups, anything that might have consequences for the timeline on a regular basis in the coming months.
Bastian, can I just note that Daniel Tayan has put in a note to say that he's expressed interest in human rights. So if there are any more of these expressions of interest, please may I just ask the team to make a note of that and to put it into the process with the appropriate channels to make those decisions in the coming weeks.
Yes, so we will be collecting that, and we'll get back to the individual members on that.
Thank you.
Moving on then to contents of the phase 2, and in particular human rights. We did mention early on that we would start this work, and we have done so. We had initial scoping interviews with 3 GSSB members as well as 6 additional subject matter experts. The names you see on on the screen now. And we're preparing an initial discussion paper for the GSB for the March in-person meeting. And the aim of the March discussion will be to agree on the scope and objectives of the review and the next steps. If there are members right now that would like to be involved in that initial scoping stage, would like to provide input, we can schedule a call with you. You can provide your input in writing. It would be great if you could indicate your interest in that in the coming days, since we will be working towards preparing a draft paper by the end of next week. I think what is important to say about this particular topic is that we will have to deal with a number of considerations here. One is how human rights sit and should be covered in the overall new structure of the standards, and the question which contents that pertain to human rights should sit in which section, basically, of the standards, and in which standard in particular. There is also the question of what it is that we're performing against. I think we all have a good understanding of, in particular, the UN human rights work that has happened and how that has been becoming a best practice globally, and I think the importance of being close to the work that Ruggie has done in that space. But beyond that, there are other developments also that we should be rendering in, and that will be a key for defining the scope. There is also an element of staging content production, because once we have covered the high-level aspects of this work, we will also have to venture into a prioritization exercise and understand, likely, which individual standards that we already have in-house need to review from a human rights perspective, and or whether we have significant gaps that we need to fill from a human rights perspective. All of this will be framed up in a paper for you that you will receive ahead of the in-person meeting in March. And what we really aim to do in March is to spend sufficient time with you to establish a baseline expectation for this work going forward. Based on the discussion, we will then devise a project proposal and a timeline for this work to commence somewhere in the next months. Judy, I think this is what we wanted to share at this stage. Okay. on the progress made. Again, there is an invitation on human rights in particular for those members who we haven't talked to on scoping yet, but those who have an interest in having that conversation, please let us know in the next days, and we can get in touch.
Okay. Well, I note that Michel Wacher has put in a comment in the chat function that has to do with some suggestions that the team might take on board with respect to the scoping and interviews process that will be forthcoming. So thank you for that comment, Michel, and I'm sure that the Standards Division will take note of that as well. I think I would just like to note that this now in 2017, this begins a process that we've never done before at the GSSB. We will be for the first time reviewing and updating the content of standards, and it remains to be seen what that process looks like. And as we've seen from the discussion of the three topics that are in process at the moment, they're all quite different from each other, and the process will look a bit different in each case. So it will be an interesting challenge for us to do what needs to be done for the individual standards while also maintaining the integrity of the standards as a group. So thank you all for your contributions and your wisdom as we work through this over the coming months. I would note, Bastien, that Stian van Raag has also put in a comment with respect to some of the human rights baseline work that you're doing right now. Please may I ask you to follow up with him as well as to any contributions that he can make to that.
Yeah, all the contributions of the members are noted, and the team will follow up.
Thank you. Can I open the floor to any particular discussion, comments, questions that board members would like to add at this point? There's a specific comment now that's come from Michel Wacher with some research that you might follow up. Would anyone like to raise your hand, ask a question, make a comment? Okay, Bastian, are there any particular pieces of information or feedback that you're hoping to get from this conversation at this point?
No, this was merely an update at this stage,
Okay.
And also to flag the process going forward, and when you have a chance to weigh in on the detail on the different projects.
Right. Thank you very much. So all of the contributions in the chat window will absolutely be noted and followed up on. Bastian, does that mean if we don't have any other discussion on the standard reviews that we can go on to the next item on our agenda?
Correct, yes.
Okay. All right, well, with the board's agreement, that is what we will do. We're now into any other business, and we have a little assortment of issues on the agenda at this point. I believe the first one will be to do with the technical inquiries that the Standards Division has been receiving about the standards. Can I invite you, Bastian, to just talk us through what's on the AOB and any discussion that you would like to have with the board around those?
Yes, thank you, Judy. So the first element that we have for you is item 4, the summary of technical questions on the GRI standards. And for the new members, just as a background, with the rollout of the GRI standards, we have decided, together with the GSSB, that we will provide a full overview of technical questions raised regarding the standards. So questions that we receive here at the Secretariat, and we will provide a complete overview and also a high-level analysis on a regular basis to the GSB. And that is really, first and foremost, to follow the early adoption of the standards, to flag issues that might require discussion by the GSSB early on, and to set, if needed, processes in motion to address questions that we receive. I think what you overall see is that the overall number of questions is going up. We're receiving more questions, which seems to point to the fact that more companies are actually now engaging with the standards and starting to work with them. We have, I think it's fair to summarize that we haven't seen very many new subjects that are raised with the Secretariat and the Standards Division. It is still around the materiality principles, the use of the sector disclosures, in accordance criteria, and content index requirements, where most of the attention of the inquiries is focused. And we have done some work to clarify the clarification on materiality that was part of the transition to standards. So we have released, as part of the FAQ, a text that explains that particular matter in a bit more detail. No new content was introduced. We have discussed this based on feedback here internally at GRI, and developed a text together with Judy that we have made available. And we will be testing whether this additional level of explanation of the concept of materiality, the way it is handled with GRI standards, is helpful for practitioners. I think we will be able to report back on that already at the March meeting. We have not identified any particular subject matter that would need attention of the GSSB now. Our question to you is, in reviewing the document that we have provided, whether there is something that you would like to discuss further now where you have follow-up questions, or whether you have heard feedback that we should be rendering in our overview of comments received. We're always happy to reach out also to people in your network that have observations about the standards to learn more about feedback that is out there. It is important to mention in this context also that we will reserve time at the March in-person meeting to discuss future monitoring efforts, so efforts to review reporting practice and talk to practitioners that have applied the standards on an ongoing basis, so that we get a very good overview for the GSB at any moment in time about the rising practice around the GRI standards. I think I leave that first item at this and open for questions by GSSB members. So specifically questions around the document, issues, clarifications that I might be able to provide at this stage, but also feedback that you are hearing.
Okay, thanks, Sebastian. So we have hands raised from Stian Bondracht and Kirsten Hoofy and Evan Harvey. So I'll call first on Stian to make a comment.
Judy, thank you, and Bastian, thank you for a very comprehensive document that you put together. I may have missed it during previous meetings, but I think there's a huge value in publishing this document, but adding another column in terms of the response that was provided by the GRI. That will serve as an excellent tool by other reporters going through the questions and, just observing what the response is. And as I said, I may have missed in previous meetings what the Secretariat's approach to this type of public response is, if I might call it that.
Well, thank you, Stian. I think for now what we've been trying to do is we have been trying to group the inquiries that we're receiving by subject matter and provide a public response as part of the FAQ that we have established on the website. And that is an attempt to streamline our communication to the outside world on the main issues. That is not reflective of each and every inquiry that we receive, but when you go through the document, you also see that some of them are extremely specific, research inquiries and these kind of things. So we are right now planning to channel a lot of the traffic back to the FAQs to the extent possible. What we can do going forward is, once we see that we receive many more inquiries that are not covered by the FAQ, and for some reason we cannot develop FAQ contents, whether we can actually develop, or at least give an indication to the GSB how we are handling these issues. I think as an immediate follow-up, I will discuss with the team whether we can indicate for the GSSB to what extent the inquiries that you see in this log of inquiries received have been covered by the FAQ already. Then that would give, so we basically send you, but also the practitioners that have a keen interest in understanding how this is developing back to the responses that we're providing as part of the FAQ.
That will be great, Bastian. Perhaps, just by a link to the FAQ, link to the question raised there.
Yeah, no, it's a very good suggestion. Thank you.
Okay, Kirsten.
Thank you. When I first read this document, or the summary of technical inquiries, I was a bit surprised about the process here. I've later on realized that when the GSSB are being involved, this might be when there are interpretations of the framework, and having read through the answer itself, it wasn't really an interpretation, it was more an explication of what was being meant. Still, I'm a bit surprised about the process, because the chair of the GSSB, of course, she should be consulted. The former interim chief executive. I do highly respect that due to his personal competence. But the current chief executive of GRI, why is he involved in this process? In addition, I would appreciate if we could, if the Secretariat could include the response itself in the documents that are being distributed. It took some time before I understood that there was a link in there, but for us reading the papers on paper or offline, it would be a great help if we could have everything included in the text. Thank you.
Thank you, Kirsten, and I think good feedback, all points noted, and we can definitely make the text of the FAQ that is responsive to the issues raised part of the documents going forward. As to the process, the one reason that the new chief executive of GI was involved is he has brought, I think, the US perspective to GI, and it has been particularly pronounced in the US market that I would describe it almost as confusion about whether or not the GI standards have brought a different materiality definition and whether there have been fundamental changes to the approach by GI to materiality, and he has brought that feedback back, and we want from the US, and we wanted to make sure that what we write up is actually also responsive of the stakeholder inquiries that he has received on his first travels for GRI. That was the reason. I think it's not the default process going forward. I also note the interest of the GSSB to be involved in devising these contents, and we will look at how we can do that going forward.
So thank you, Bastian. And I think maybe it's just worth us saying that it seems to me that we ought to spend a little bit of time at our in-person meeting discussing what is the appropriate process going forward for answering these FAQs and determining whether there is further content that needs to be developed or a formal interpretation that needs to be created. And if there is not, then what is the correct process to be done? And if there is, then what's the correct process to be followed there? I think that would be very useful for everyone to understand, both on the Standards Board and also our stakeholders externally, where these come from. We've had a couple of other comments. We have Julia Wilson raising her hand, and we have a couple of comments from Michelle and Sulema as to this discussion we've just been having. And I'm pretty sure, isn't it right to say, Bastian, that we will be discussing the FAQ and the technical questions on the standards in more detail at our in-person meeting, yes?
That is correct, but also the process and how we want to bring this to you going forward. Yes, that is something. I think it is just one consideration for that matter. We're receiving very many inquiries, as you see from this. We're trying to streamline that as much as possible, and we have to, I think, strike a balance between being responsive and when is something significant enough to be raised with the GSB. I think we have clear indication from the membership that there would have been a preference to be involved for that particular issue here with materiality. We note that, but let's have the discussion also in March around process and when it is an opportune moment to get the GSSB involved.
Okay, thank you. All right, so Julia, you would like to ask a question or make a comment?
Yep, thank you. I just wanted to say I'm glad to hear that materiality is a big part of a point of clarification. When I attended the event that you hosted, Bastian, in New York in November, I know that was sort of the number one question, at least in New York, and I see it in the document here. I was just going to ask if you could, I want to make sure that I have what you're referring to on materiality to take a look at. So if you could share a link or point me in the right direction, that'd be great. Or perhaps I've misunderstood it, and that's something that we're going to wait to review in the in-person meeting in March.
We can share the link to the contents on the website as a follow-up. We will make sure that in the next email going out from the secretary to you, this will be included.
Great, thank you.
Okay, clearly there's more discussion to be had around this issue. There's a comment from Evan Harvey in the chat function as well that follows up on Kirsten's point. Evan, would you like to actually ask a question? There's a somewhat more detailed question coming through on the chat function that we should possibly put into the public record. Evan, if you'd like to add that into the discussion.
Yeah, my original question was about the materiality, the evolving interpretation of materiality, having talked about this with Tim last week a little bit, and sort of the perception in the business community and how much the standards approach alters a sort of somewhat traditional interpretation of materiality. But I think that we've already covered that, and we're going to look at that more next month. I guess the other question I have is more technical. This list, having looked through it, is very fascinating. It's just the breadth and the depth of some of these questions. So for Bastian, two quick questions. Where do most of these comments come from? Is it coming from the practitioner level, from the executive level, from a representative at companies or other places? I'm just curious to know how, quote, in the weeds the people are that come up with some of these questions, some of which are very specific and purposeful. And second, is this a complete list of all the inbound inquiries related to the standards, or is this just a summary giving us the general direction by subject area of the kinds of comments that we've gotten?
So, Bastian, would you like to respond?
Yes, Evan. What you find here in the document is the full overview of questions received. The main channel for us to receive questions is an email address, standards@globalreporting.org, which we have been promoting through all our rollout activities. We are also receiving inquiries that are not technical in nature, but more around where can I find the document and so on. So there's another layer to this. In terms of who is asking questions, I think the best proxy that I would give for that is people that actually deal with the subject matter in terms of implementation, or are tasked with deciding whether or not they implement the standards this year or next year. So it is varying levels of I think seniority in reporting organizations. Also academics, researchers and students inquire with us regarding these contents. And I think we see a certain seasonality to this. What I personally would expect, based on the years I've spent monitoring this, is that we see a big uptake in terms of inquiries over the summer months, when organizations will really start to, and that's the bulk of organizations, will start to consider whether they go ahead and implement the GRI standards for their reporting on the year 2017. So this is just the first indication of what it is in terms of inquiries. There will be a lot more coming. We have also systems in place to gather feedback from the rollout events, from our local networks, from our Gold community, and members of GRI staff that are traveling the world and meeting stakeholders. That's an additional level of feedback that we will bring to you in a structured way going forward. Here we are focusing really on the feedback received through the main channel of email correspondence.
Excellent, thanks.
Okay, thank you. Right, suffice it to say that the topic of materiality is one that the GSSB is likely to review periodically. It is absolutely one of the subjects of great discussion and fascination among our stakeholders, and is incredibly significant in the uptake of the standards in terms of how companies understand their responsibilities with respect to the content and approach in sustainability reporting. It is therefore a subject of great interest, and one that I am sure we will continue to spend a lot of time on in the future, having already done so for many years.
Judy, this is Selena. Can I?
Yeah.
Just a very, thank you. Just a very quick comment. First of all, apologize for the background noise, if any. And second of all, I just read the response that it was inserted into the website of GRI regarding materiality, and I'm comfortable with the content of it. What I would like to discuss in March, it's about the process and how to react to some, for the timing perspective from now on. But I'm not uncomfortable with the content, but I'm also got a little bit surprised with the whole process. Thank you.
Yes, thank you, Sulema. We will absolutely do that. Thank you for that comment. Bastien, do you think we can move on to the next topic here?
Yes, absolutely. And what I want to provide on the next item is an update on the GRI standards rollout. What you have on the slide on the screen now is an overview of the events that are currently scheduled in the coming weeks. We had the opportunity to promote the GRI standards and officially launch them in India last week, in New Delhi and in Mumbai. We're next scheduled to go to Switzerland. We have a launch here locally in the Netherlands, then Spain, Norway, Mexico, Buenos Aires, so Argentina, and Taiwan. This is what is currently scheduled. We're working on between 5 and 10 additional events between now and end of July at the moment, and they will hopefully fall into place and be confirmed until we meet in March. So it's still a heavy agenda ahead of us. We try actually to be represented with the standards division at most of these launches. For the ones that you see on screen, we will be represented with the standards division. This will then also, I think, conclude that initial rollout phase. And I wanted to report back a bit on also the success and one of the probably most distinct measures of success is actually to what extent we can drive traffic to our contents and how many people, based on our engagement at in-person events, launch events around the globe, the webinars that we've provided, a lot of the communication that and endorsement that we have received, how many people will show actually up and access the contents. And I provide here on the slide a couple of the stats. So we have close to 170,000 unique page views on the GI standards webpage. So that's individuals that visit the pages that we and consult the contents that we are providing. It's a significant change there in numbers. We have never seen such a high level of interest in these contents. Also, the number of downloads of the GI standards is really increasing along the lines of what we have expected. We are now around 2 times the volume that we had with G4 on average, which is also very promising. So we're building our base of users, and a great element of the new website that we have developed for the launch was that we are actually able to capture also the profile data for people who are engaged with our contents, and that gives us a great overview of the actual users and a direct link also to the users. We offer them to actually opt in for direct mailings around the standards going forward. So if we have projects to announce, if we want to inform about the public comment opportunities and so on, we are able to reach out to a growing number of practitioners out there. And we've built that just in the last 4 months, basically, a database of almost 14,000 contacts, which is also a very, very good number considering earlier attempts of GI to get to that level of data and also approximation of our user base. We will discuss with you also in the March meeting and beyond how we leverage that. We have to strike a balance. We don't want to over-communicate here. We are looking at different ways of structuring that at the moment, but likely we will move in the direction of providing a quarterly update on the activities of the GSSB to those that have now opted in for that information, and we want to build the database of contacts going forward through our outreach activities. When you look at what we have achieved so far, I think we have now, we don't have the results in for India, the meetings last week, but for the 13 launch events in 11 countries between 19th of October and 9th of December, we had more than 1,200 attendees, very many non-reporters, and that's very positive, we believe, because quite a few of the people who have joined these events, I've been to a number of them, actually come to the event with the objective to assess whether GI reporting is the way forward for them. So we are opening up for new audiences. That's very promising. We have very, very positive ratings for the overall event experience. 90% rate the events that we've organized between good and very good. 87% say that the introduction to the GRI standards that we provide is clear or very clear, and 89% from the survey respondents believe that the standards will help them with their reporting needs. And I think it's that last element that is particularly promising. So people come, have a look, and decide that they either continue to use GRI based on the new iteration of the core product, or actually develop an interest in applying the standards going forward. And these are all very positive figures overall. As I said, this is not the end of this effort. We have an equal number of events coming up still. And we will report back to you also on what we learned there. The next events are mostly structured also around launches of the actual translations to the key languages that we have identified based on market share, overall market share of GI. And we will be launching a number of language versions over the next months, and that will be the main focus of activity between now and July. Maybe I pause here for a moment. Are there any questions related to these contents that have been presented now on the rollout?
Thanks, Bastian. I think for my part, I'm very much looking forward to all of this discussion at our in-person meeting, and to learning alongside the rest of the Standards Board how we can best come to understand our users and their needs through these types of activities, so that we can carry on our work in developing the standards in the future in the best possible way. Would anybody like to raise their hands here or offer an observation or comment?
This is Daniel, Thailand. Can I have a
Thank you.
say?
Yes, thank you, Daniel. Go ahead.
Yeah, so I'm here, and in the background, I'm making breakfast for my son, who's 13, and he asked if GRI is on Snapchat. And I kind of laughed about that, but listening to the sort of the rapid increase in numbers of users and visitors and so forth, I think it's a good time maybe to take a step back and think about our communication and our the instruments that we have for communication and the website functions and the different spaces that we're at. And I would like to suggest that this should be a priority for 2017, and that we really think about how to use that growing user base and internet traffic that we're getting.
Thank you, Daniel. Notwithstanding whether or not GRI has a Snapchat profile, I think that's an excellent observation that also needs to be considered alongside these in-person and more traditional kind of outreach activities.
Yeah, and maybe just to add to this, Bastian, so we have started work together with Jack and Sarah in the Standards Division to devise a communications, first of all, it's now a review of what we have in-house, but then also a communications plan going forward. And that is something that we would also like to discuss with you We're working towards discussing that with you likely in April. I'm not sure that we can fit it in. We'll come back to that in a moment on the March agenda, but we are preparing this, and it is indeed about what Daniel is highlighting. We have to understand how we best reach out to the user base and which channels are particularly effective.
Yeah, thank you very much. I think GRI obviously is active on Twitter and Facebook, but I believe it is fairly straightforward and traditional in the way that it uses those platforms. And this is something that I think we'll all need to learn as we progress with this, what we can do to make the most of those platforms and the reach that they have to audiences. Any other comments or questions on the standards rollout? Any other can I then suggest, Bastian, that we move on to the next item?
Yes, and on the next slide, what you find is just a high-level overview of developments here that we would like to bring to your attention. First of all, you've all been informed, and you've seen also a lot of communication from GRI to the network about the fact that Tim Moen has started here at the Secretariat as the new Chief Executive of GRI. You will have the opportunity to meet Tim at the in-person meeting and discuss with him. Tim is coming to GRI after more than 20 years of career in industry in the US. He has been working for the EPA before that in the US, and he is bringing a very important perspective, and I think on the leadership level also a new perspective to GRI, different from the leaders before him. And we will use the March meeting to introduce him and give him the opportunity to discuss with you. There are two other initiatives I have from GRI overall that I would like to bring to your attention because it has been in the communications. GRI partnered with the UNGC to work on the SDGs, and that is a project that will scope out how corporates can potentially report on the contribution to the SDGs going forward. Important work also for consideration of the GSB because it might actually render some implications for the standard setting work in the sense that gaps are identified, things that are currently not covered in the standards and that should or could be covered going forward to be reflective of one of the very important, I think, agenda setting developments in the sustainable development space, the SDGs. We will also at the in-person meeting discuss that project in more detail with you. And the responsible director, Teresa Vogelberg, will be available to present the project and discuss with you in March. Then two more projects that I would like to bring to your attention. We are continuing the corporate leadership group together now with the IRC on integrated reporting. So there was an effort on integrated reporting, a corporate leadership group for the last 2 years. We're continuing this effort now. And we have partnered with the IRC. I'm flagging this also because this might potentially have outcomes that the GSB want to consider for standard setting going forward. And there is also a group on the SDGs that is in part also a sub-project of the UNGC collaboration. But this is also something that GRI is advertising very actively at the moment. I wanted to flag that up for you. We will share more detailed information on these projects just as an FYI with you. We're not planning to have discussions in detail about this at the in-person meeting. Last but not least, we had informed you about that we have advertised positions for the sector program for the standards division. So this dates back to discussions we had with the GSSB and actually the TSC before, almost 2.5 years ago now, where we said once budget becomes available, we should look into building capacity to start sector work. And this moment has come, so we have funding secured from GRI to start to hire in a sector team, basically, as part of the standards division. We have a post out for a deputy director sector program and a second post for a manager sector program. This is still, I think this is closing today, actually, and we will be reviewing applications, and I will be able to provide feedback on that at the March meeting. We are then aiming to progress to build the team, and that had been budgeted last summer towards the end of the financial year of GI, so that we will have 4 full-time equivalents on sectors by end of June this year. That is currently the planning, and we will update you on that. I think we will start to discuss the sector program in more detail when we have the deputy director on the team, and that will be the moment that we start discussions with you also and re-engage on that subject matter. For the members that have joined now, we will make sure that you are updated about the developments that have taken place in the run-up to the decision to start work on sector, and we will make sure that you have access to all the documents that had been shared with the GSB in earlier years. I'll leave it at that with the developments. I think the main message is that for the things that pertain directly to your work, we will make it part of the March agenda, which now leads me to the next slide, and that is on the draft agenda for the March meeting. We are planning, as part of the meeting, which is a 2-day meeting, on the second day we will actually have the DPOC members present. They will be observers for the second day. And as part of the 2-day meeting, we definitely want you to have a discussion with the new GRI Chief Executive, Tim Moen. We definitely, and we will prioritize that, want to discuss the scoping of our phase 2 projects, human rights, I mentioned that earlier in the call, but also GRI 201, economic performance. And we want to provide an update on phase 1, the project working groups, the schedules, the timing, any issues that need your attention at this point in time. Other subject matters that we would like to schedule in here is then a discussion on how the GSB wants to prioritize topics for review and development of new contents for the next years, and that will actually come your way rather quickly. We will have to start to engage the public on that in the coming months as per due process to set the agenda for the coming year. And we want to discuss the process with you. We will slot in a discussion on the technical queries, the monitoring approach, and importantly also the process by which we run contents that we release to clarify questions and subject matters that are raised with us. So that's definitely part of the agenda. Last but not least, the discussion on the UNGC-GRI collaboration regarding the SDGs will be covered, and we're looking at also a discussion on the FSB TCFD recommendations and likely implications at this point in time, since they are not final yet. This has been picked up by the GSB in several meetings last year. It is an important development in our arena, and we want to provide you with an overview of the comments provided into that process by GRI and potential implications at this stage for the GSB. We're looking at confirming a speaker actually from the FSB TCFD. If possible, we want them to present their work to you, but that is not confirmed yet. We will look whether this is actually feasible. Well, that's the overview of contents that we would like to cover, but it is now also the opportunity to raise those subject matters with us that you would like to see on the schedule.
Okay. Bastian, I'll just note that there are some members who have expressed some interest in hearing more about the GRI integrated reporting collaboration initiative as well. And perhaps there's some moment to do that in our in-person meeting, as well as just noting that there is interest in the UNGC SDG collaboration. So it's great to see that that will be on the agenda. May I ask, Bastian, do we have an obligation to publish our agenda in final at a particular moment such that there is a deadline by which members ought to send in any requests for further discussion on items that don't come up today in today's conversation? If anyone wants to add anything at this point, by when must they do that so that we can meet our obligations?
Yes. So in line with the process, we have to post the agenda and share it with you, the final agenda, 10 working days ahead of ahead of the meeting, and that will be the 7th of March. So if you want to provide input on topics to be covered on the agenda for the upcoming in-person meeting, 21st, 22nd of March in Amsterdam, I would like to invite you to provide that feedback the latest by mid of next week. That will then enable us to look at feasibility to slot topics in, discuss it with you, Judy, and then make it part of the final agenda.
Okay. So that would be, let's say, the 1st of March.
Exactly,
the day
yes.
That we would like to ask the Standards Board members if they think of anything outside of this discussion today, to please send those comments in to you or to me by the next Wednesday, so that we can do that review and discussion process and share it with the rest of the board in good time. Are there any other contributions that people would like to make to this discussion, or are there any queries about any of the AOB, I suppose, that we haven't gotten to yet?
No.
Okay. Bastian, I think we may have, in that event, I think we may have come to the conclusion of our agenda today.
Yes.
Is there anything from the Standards Division that you would still like to say or to share?
No, there are no additional topics that we would like to bring to your attention now. From our end, nothing additional to discuss.
Okay. All right. So I will just reiterate the request to the Standards Board members to be thinking about our in-person agenda and whether there are any queries or suggestions that you would like to make between now and next Wednesday, the 1st of March. We will then look forward to developing all of the inputs into the in-person meeting, as well as preparing our discussion on the 7th of March, which has to do with the project working group membership and composition. Can I just then state my thanks to the Standards Division for all of their excellent support, as usual, in creating the materials and providing all of the efforts that allow us to move forward with our work so efficiently and professionally. May I also extend my thanks to all of the Standards Board for their participation in today's meeting, and my thanks also to the new members for agreeing to be on this journey with us, and looking forward to the next steps. With that, I will say thank you to everyone, and I'll close the meeting and look forward to speaking with you all next time.
Thank you.
Thanks a lot, Judy.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Thanks, everyone.
Bye.
Thanks, everyone.